deceit, bankruptcy, love, and loss. Come with me to explore the unbelievable life of Walt Disney. This is The Imagination Files. Walter Elias Disney was born December 5, 1901 in Chicago, Illinois, to Elias Disney and Flora Call. Walt had three brothers named Herbert, Raymond, and Roy, and a sister named Ruth. When Walt was just 4 years old, Elias and Flora moved the family to a small farm in Marceline, Missouri. This town is believed to be the inspiration for Main Street USA in Disneyland. With its small-town charm and feel, while they lived there, Walt began to show an aptitude for drawing and painting. A neighbor paid Walt to draw pictures of his horse when Walt was only 7 years old. Walt continued to grow his talent through copying the front-page cartoons of Ryan Walker and developed a talent for watercolors and crayons. Eventually, Elias gave up farming. He moved the family to Kansas, Missouri. Here, many things would happen that would influence Walt's behaviors and habits. Many of these behaviors and habits came from delivering newspapers for his father's newspaper business that he bought when they moved to Kansas. Walt worked this paper route from the time he was 9 years old until he was 15. Walt recollected one time, "When I was 9, my brother Roy and I were already businessmen. We had a newspaper route, delivering papers in a residence area every morning and evening of the year, rain, shine, or snow. We got up at 3:30 a.m., worked until the school bell rang, and did the same thing again from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until supper time." Along with the long hours and rough conditions, Walt described truly how tough it was on the paper route some days. "It was always pitch dark when I left home and on winter mornings, and often bitter cold. Sometimes I plowed my way through several feet of freshly fallen snow, breaking a path in these early morning hours, and I was sleepy. Occasionally when I reached the warm hall of an apartment house, I'd lie down for a short snooze, awakening to find it was daylight." While in Kansas, Walt also began studying cartooning with a correspondence school and studied at the Kansas City Art Institute of School and Design. Then, in 1917, the Disney family moved again. This time it was to the windy city of Chicago, Illinois. Here, Walt attended McKinley High School in Chicago, where he focused on both drawing and photography, and attended the Academy of Fine Art at night. With his talent for drawing and photography, he contributed both to the school newspaper. A year later, in 1918, with World War I raging on, Walt tried to enlist for military service. Due to him being only 16 at the time, he was rejected. He then decided to join the American Red Cross, where he was an ambulance driver. He was sent overseas to France and Germany, where he chauffeured Red Cross officials and drove the ambulance. Notably, his ambulance was covered front to back with cartoons and drawings. After the war, Walt returned to Kansas City in 1919. Upon his return, Walt found employment as a draftsman and inker in commercial art studios. Here, he would meet one of his close lifelong friends, business partner, and huge contributor to his success, Iworks. Around this time, he also became an advertising cartoonist. It was also in Kansas City in 1920 that Walt created his first original cartoon that he marketed himself. Dissatisfaction with their progress eventually led Walt and to create their own studio in 1922. After acquiring a second-hand movie camera, they began making 1 to 2 minute long animated advertising films that they distributed to local movie theaters. It was also during this time that Walt and made a series of short cartoons called Laugh-O-Grams, and possibly even more consequential to their success, Alice in Cartoonland. This was a pilot film for a bunch of 7-minute cartoons that mixed live action and cartoon animation. After the New York producer they were working with cheated them, Walt had to declare bankruptcy. This resulted in Walt packing up and moving to California to pursue being a cinematographer. Walt only had $40, some drawing material, and a finished animated and live-action film. The shocking success of the Alice in Cartoonland shorts changed his mind, and as a result, he and his brother Roy reopened shop in Hollywood in 1923, pulling together Walt's $40 and Roy's $250, as well as borrowing an additional $500 from the bank. Through the pooling of this money, they were able to construct a camera stand and begin working out of their uncle's garage. They then received an order from New York for the first Alice comedy short. Working out of the back of a Hollywood real estate office 2 blocks from their uncle's house, Roy became Walt's business manager, and Walt convinced to come back and help with the drawings of the cartoons. It was during this time in 1925 that Walt married one of his first employees, Lillian Bounds. In 1927, Walt, and Roy would see another great success in their new cartoon they invented for Universal Pictures, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. 2 important people to know from Universal are Charles Mintz and George Winkler. The new cartoon would be contracted for $1,500 per film and became Universal's first major hit. The success and popularity of Oswald rivaled that of characters like Felix the Cat and Coco the Clown. The success of Oswald allowed Walt, Roy, and Ub to grow their studio staff to nearly 20 and resulted in the Disney brothers receiving $500 per Oswald short. This success would be short-lived for the Disney brothers and Ub anyways. In February of 1928, amid fears that Mintz would forego renewing the contract for Oswald and that Winkler was hiring away Walt's animators, Walt and Lillian traveled to New York to search for other potential distributors for the studio's cartoons. While in New York, Walt visited Mintz in hopes of negotiating a more lucrative contract. Mintz would only settle for a 20% cut for Walt and Roy. Due to being unable to reach an agreement and most of his fellow animators leaving to go work for Mintz, Walt quit making and working on the Oswald cartoons. Now comes the part many of you will be familiar with, but you may not know all of the finer details. This is the part where Mickey Mouse came to be. Walt came up with the idea of Mickey Mouse on the train ride back from New York to California after that meeting with Mintz. During that ride back, Walt sent a telegram to Roy telling him, "Don't worry, everything okay," and would not mention at the time the catastrophic blow of losing Oswald and most of their animators. Walt knew for things to be okay, he needed to come up with a new character quickly. Walt would recall in a 1948 essay titled "What Mickey Means to Me" that he popped out of my mind onto a drawing pad 20 years ago on a train ride from Manhattan to Hollywood at a time when the business fortunes of my brother Roy and myself were at lowest ebb, and disaster seemed right around the corner. Walt initially wanted to name this new mouse character Mortimer Mouse, but his wife Lily urged him to change the name. They decided on Mickey Mouse for the name. Running with his initial idea and some further development and refinement by Ub, Mickey Mouse was born. While Mickey Mouse was first used in a silent cartoon called Plain Crazy and Galop and Gotcho, his first official screen debut was Steamboat Willie. Seeing the possibilities for sound in animated cartoons after seeing The Jazz Singer, Walt decided to hold off on releasing the first two cartoons and instead quickly produced the third Mickey Mouse cartoon with voices and music equipped. Steamboat Willie was the first fully synchronized sound cartoon in the world and premiered at the Colony Theater in New York in November of 1928. Walt would ultimately voice Mickey Mouse until 1947. In 1929, Walt continued to push the boundaries with a new series called Silly Symphonies. He had created a studio staffed with creative young people who were headed by Ub. The series is where the invention of Technicolor would be introduced to animation. The series contained a picture entitled The Skeleton Dance, where a skeleton rises from the grave and through dancing to classical themes created a clattering sound. This created popular acclaim for the Silly Symphonies series. Although the studio continued to see tremendous success and love for their cartoons due to more technical work and drawing becoming more complicated, making costs increase substantially, it was continually in peril of going out of business. Mickey and Minnie Mouse would remain ever popular to the public, and Walt would come to invent Donald Duck, Pluto, and Goofy. In 1933, during the Great Depression, Walt produced a short called The Three Little Pigs. Due to the similarities to how people felt having overcome adversity and persevered through the economic disaster, this cartoon took the country by storm. In it was a song called Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf, that people viewed it as a happy taunting of adversity. It was during this time of the Great Depression that audiences all over the world endeared themselves to Walt and his operation. Walt and his studio began making a profit despite the fact that the Depression was ongoing. It was during this time that Roy franchised tie-in sales with the cartoon of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. This included watches, dolls, shirts, and tops, helping to build more success and money for the company. They had pushed through the adversity and trials, and in 1937, Walt would receive his first of 32 Academy Awards with the film titled Flowers and Trees. 1937 continued to be a tremendous showing from the studio for their creativity and fortitude. The studio had created an invention called the multiplane camera that was first used on the short The Old Mill. Marveled for its innovation, it allowed depth to be added to the cartoons and was used in the making of the new venture for Walt and the studio. After being in production since 1934, Walt released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This became the first full-length animated musical feature and cost a tremendous $1,499,000 to make, which was unheard of for the time. This was especially true as the country was still in the depths of the Great Depression. All of this gave it the recognition of being one of the greatest feats of the motion picture industry. He then proceeded to develop Pinocchio, Dumbo, and Bambi as full-length films. In 1940, the Disney Company completed construction on their new Burbank studio. This new studio allowed Walt to employ more than 1,000 artists, animators, storymen, and technicians. Although in 1941, a strike led the Disney Company to not producing any animated shorts or films for many years, and many of their top animators resigning. Towards the end of World War II, Disney utilized around 94% of their facilities for special government work to help with the production of propaganda and training films for soldiers and health films for schools. A small effort was still put into the making of comedy shorts to help with civilian and military morale, and was seen as highly essential. Disney continued the combination of live action and cartoon with The Three Caballeros, Song of the South, and Mary Poppins. Around this time, the Disney studios saw the potential of television and began to create programs for it. This led to the production of the Zorro and Davy Crockett series, The Wonderful World of Color, and the Mickey Mouse Club. It should also be noted that it was in the late 30s and early 40s that Walt had transitioned from actively animating and designing to being a coordinator, producer, and final decision maker. It was also during this time that the idea of Disneyland began to take root in Walt's mind. While taking his daughters to the Griffith Park to ride the merry-go-round for one of his famous Daddy's Days, Walt imagined a safe, clean, and friendly place where parents and their children could ride rides and have fun together. He initiated these plans in the early 1950s, initially planning the park to be built at the Burbank Studios. Soon, his plans would outgrow this small studio space, and he would begin looking elsewhere, finally landing on a space in Anaheim. When Disneyland finally opened on July 17, 1955, it was a complete disaster. Counterfeit tickets led to overcrowding, a plumber strike when toilets were overflowing and water fountains weren't working, rides breaking down constantly, and freshly laid asphalt causing women's high heels to get stuck. It was such a disaster that Walt declared it as a media day rather than the official opening, and instead would declare the next day, July 18, 1955, as the official opening day. Walt's focus would remain on Disneyland and subsequently the beginning plans of Disney World until his passing on December 15, 1966. Walt had just turned 65. The world was shattered, especially those that had worked for Walt or knew him. The world had just lost someone that they worldviewed as a visionary storyteller that played a major role in their development and childhoods. Walt will be remembered as a pioneer of creativity, imagination, and technology, and will be missed for generations to come. If you like this content, please hit the like, share, and follow buttons, and comment on something new you learned about Walt Disney or any ideas you'd like me to cover in the future. Thanks for watching, and always remember, you can dream it, you can do it.